Welcome to the Primate Talk podcast. Here we have nuanced interactions with interesting folks undertaking unconventional endeavors and see the world through eyes that are not just our own. As the intro segment to this episode, I'm excited to talk about Twillo, a wonderful initiative by one of the most talented and creative individuals I've been fortunate enough to know, Rupambika Kande. Rupa believes that creative expression is one of the simplest and easiest ways to achieve mindfulness. True indeed, it can be anything from journaling, writing, doodling, painting to craft making. Getting lost in the process of creation can actually activate a meditative state and help you relax and let go of stress. Through its imagination inciting artline, Twillo seeks to bring back the lost child in you, my amigos. Twillo's art and craft line includes a vivid collection of infinite possibilities in the form of paper boxes, letter sets, and book cards. And that's not all. Twillo has a segment called the Twillo Journal, which contains small, digestible articles on mindfulness, productivity, creativity, and happiness, a paradigm shift we all need in these overwhelming times. You can also check out their Instagram handle, where they post these short DIY videos and daily posts on mindfulness activities. I adore their Instagram handle, which is full of visually appealing pictures, especially this one. As an analyst, I am amazed by how they've been able to capture the problem of lost creativity through an appealing graph. You can find the link to their website and Instagram handle in the video description. Go ahead, guys, support our unsung artists and help create a space of infinite possibilities. In the third episode of Primate Talk, I sit down with one of our co founders, Neelima Menon. Neelima is a longtime friend and someone who played a role in getting this podcast into what it is today. In this episode, we primarily talk about stress from the perspective of mental and physical health, stress during pandemic and how people are managing it, about art and its role in mindfulness, and a little bit about interior design. So grab a glass of wine or a bag of popcorns or whatever you like to eat as we get into this casual discussion on some important matters of the day relating to stress and team. Hoping you have a good time. Hello, everyone. I am here today with my co host, also, who I like to refer as my host, Neelima Menon. Yes, you heard that right. And I have mentioned about her you must have heard about her in Piecemeals, in the earlier podcast, the intro episode, and in the description where I mentioned, and then be like, where is Neelima Menon? We don't see her. Well, here she is.
That's why I'm the ghost host.
That's why you're the ghost host.
Come in here and there.
In sports, you'll get the joke.
Sports. Yeah, in sports.
Exactly.
Also, I gotta say this before I forget. When you mentioned me in the intro video, because I'm already excited about this, and I have done work for this bit, even though I'm just showing up now. I was totally like fangirling because I was like, oh my God, my name has been brought up.
Yeah, well, it is
such a dorky
well-deserved.
moment for me.
It is a well-deserved accreditation because we have been planning this for how long? What I think
Oh my
June
gosh.
2020. It goes way back before the actual.
Yeah.
I even discussed the idea with Siddesh, and I think I still remember vividly that we were on a call and I could hear some rogue voice. I'm sorry. We were on a call and you and I was sitting in my car because it was really hard to find privacy in my house. And we were like, what if we just start our own podcast? I don't know how that conversation went about or
Yeah.
it just sprung up. But then definitely I remember Huda was mentioned.
Mm.
Yeah. And we were like, yeah, okay. So the thing is that when someone does it, even though when you have like thoughts about doing it, when someone does it, you get this innate sense of confidence. And you're
Yeah.
like, I want to do it. I want to try
It
too.
seems a lot more accessible to you.
A lot more accessible. So, which is why shout out to Huda
Yeah.
that we are here, and you should definitely
Check out Huda. Like if you're like having like a very stressful day and you just want to relax and like have a pandemic safe therapy session where, or spa session, if you will, just make like something really warm or something like that. It's a rainy day, put Huda's podcast on. It's a great experience.
It's a great experience. Actually, it's one of those stream of consciousness podcasts. I always
Mm,
get confused with whether it's conscience or consciousness, but then I'm going to say consciousness, where the person
correct.
just goes on talking. And that is also one of the formats of podcast, which is widely popular. So you should check them out if you're one of those who just
Mm.
likes to hear about something uninterrupted by, or you just don't like a dialogue, then definitely go and switch to, or not switch to, just go check out such such podcast.
Watch
Obviously
both,
we want people, we
please.
want you people here as well. Yes,
The
exactly.
entire time the editor is just gonna be like, "Oh my god, we're gonna
uh,
lose people."
this is called hammering your own nail, or hammering your own toe. Anyway, so, well, okay, so this has been a great start, as you can already see, Niels. And we have our podcast was well received in the last times as well. So I'm just like very excited to unravel a lot of things and sort of get into a lot of territories, if you may. So, wow, I mean, I want to talk about so many things,
There's so
but
many things, right? I can
right,
see
exactly.
it.
And so that's the hardest part about starting any particular talk. But I'm really excited to talk about certain things in particular, and one of them, just that stands out right now as one of the important things that needs to be addressed, uh, is stress. And we're going to look at stress in both from the perspective of health as well as mental health, right? And so, which is why this is going to be a free session. This is not going to be about how you are used to other podcasts where we talk about how this is just a talk between co-founders who are trying to just like,
I'm just your co-founder.
the ghost co-founder. And not I'm not sure.
Not like we've been friends for years or we're kind of close. No.
Yeah, that too. But that's more for like unofficial conversations. And as you know, as I don't know, certain people, we when we interact with the outside world, we assume certain labels, which is why I like co-founders. Because to
Okay.
the other world, to the external world, it's like, yeah, these two folks or three folks who started a podcast and are like
Yeah.
talking about shit, maybe valid shit, but shit. So,
As long as it's valid shit. It's all
as
right.
long as it is valid, don't want to add
Yeah.
to the noise. Yeah, just trying our best. So anyway, I wanted to start with stress, like I said. And one of the things that stands out is how stress in the pandemic has panned out, pun intended, for people, right? And one of the things that because I've been reading about it for a long time, what I've come to understand is that stress is necessary. And someone went as far as to say, if we didn't have stress, our species would have been
Mm,
eliminated, right?
mm.
Because it keeps you on your, it keeps you on your toe, and ready for action, so you can perceive various possibilities that perhaps can happen. And they're like, okay, how do I plan for this? So it keeps you going. But prolonged stress is something which is a little is unhealthy, and we are seeing such cases in the current times, when all of us are locked in our houses, and most of us do not have much to do. And this prolonged stress, and I'll tell you what this prolonged stress comes from. This prolonged stress comes from this exposure, this wide exposure to this variety of things out there that are happening in the world. And any system, I think, even you can argue, or I agree to that, any system has a capacity. It has a particular capacity
Mm,
and limitation, right? At any given point of time, you can only bear so much. You
yeah.
can increase that capacity, but at any given point of time, you'll only have like a finite amount.
Yeah.
Now with this exposure to like a wide variety of negative things, I would say, because some things that we are not used to,
Mm,
obviously our brains are inundated with this rogue information and all of this kind of stuff that is happening. So I wanted to address the pandemic of stress as well, right?
mm,
And doing some research on it, I found out that stress is also not good for your own physiology.
Physiology, yeah.
Yeah. It can be psychosomatic induced, or it
I
can be
can vouch
somatic.
for that, by the way.
Yes, we'll get into that. We'll get into that.
Good
And
God.
yeah, so only I'm gonna put this video definitely in the show notes, where there's this guy, this is a doctor by the name of Roger Shahalt, right? And he does these, he has this amazing video, a YouTube channel where he covers everything related to COVID holistically. Like, okay, what can affect, what are the factors that can lead to increased risk of getting COVID, vaccines, and all those things. He has a very holistic channel out there. So what, this is a video that I watched only yesterday, and I will put it. I won't get too much into the medical literature, right? Because obviously I'm not an expert, so I don't want to stand at a risk of, saying something that might be wrong, right? But in essence, all the research that he did and all that 51-minute video told me is that stress can increase your likelihood of getting a viral infection. And as you, all of you know, COVID has these two stages. One is that when you're just you can basically survive at home, or basically you can recover at home. But when you, once you enter into the second stage, which is pneumonia, you have to get bedridden or you have to get hospitalized, which is mostly not a good state to be in, right? So
Mostly, yeah.
yeah, in most of the cases, as we have seen around in most
Sometimes
of
it's
the,
okay.
sometimes it's okay, sometimes
It's kind of
things
fun.
work in
It's
your
like,
favor. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you're gonna sleep like forever. I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah,
totally chill. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, and
We're
if you're
like ready
lucky
to give
enough
out
to
a
find a,
warning.
yeah.
We're like, listen, we're people that deal with stress and all of that through sarcastic jokes. Like
Coping
even
mechanisms.
morbid, yeah, even like morbid details about the pandemic. We're like kind of trying to ease the stress out of it because we don't know how else to mention it without just being like, okay, wow, this is horrible. We
This
are
is
very
horrible. Yeah.
well aware of how terrible this is. We
Terrible
know.
this is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but then we like to joke about it, not to disrespect anything that's going on or invalidate anybody else's problems or anything like that, but it's just more so because it's happening and we don't have a choice, but it's just it's just our coping mechanism to deal with it better.
Yes,
I need to
exactly.
give this warning
Sympathies,
because I
sympathies to
already
everyone. Yeah.
sympathies to everyone,
And
but still
condolences
we
to
have a
people.
very sick sense of humor. So moving
Yeah.
on.
So exactly, so that is, he looked at it in its entirety, and he said, he pointed out to a lot of researchers, which you can definitely find in the video, and you can get into it detail. He explains the whole pathophysiology of like stress and how that induces an inflammatory response that can increase your risk of getting an infection, and sort of, uh, sort of, it makes life difficult for you to just recover from it. And stress, and then he points out to another studies that were done pre-pandemic times, where he looks at like how stress is just a prolonged stress is just a bad thing, as long as it is keeping you in your, on your toes, as long as it's keeping you alive, in the sense that you're just like, okay, all right, I know what I need to do, that's fine. But any sort of like prolonged exposure to it is bad. So would you
That and
like, what would
the
you like
other
to
way.
add to it?
I think the way that I've seen it in most people that I know that deal with anxiety, like properly anxiety, but it's a problem and it's not just a thing that's driving you, it is an actual problem, is that this is the funniest thing. I'm generally such a relaxed person. I'm not someone who's like so tense or so on edge. I'm not at all like that. And when I am put in a situation, it's like to make up for the fact that I have a pretty laid back personality, it just goes to like 100.
Mm,
So doesn't prolong, like I would experience it for a very short time. And sometimes when people that go through such anxiety tend to be like, well, it's just for that short time, so it's okay.
mhm,
And
mhm,
then once whatever event that's causing it, if there's an event that causes it, sometimes it materializes for no reason. But if there's an event that's causing it, it's okay. It's just gone when it's gone and it's driving me. They'll convince themselves that it's okay. And I've experienced this full hand, and I've experienced this where I've been prepared for things, and I've experienced this when I've not. And then um, oh my god, it is certainly not a good thing, and it's there for such a short time, but it can truly strip you off, because the thing is something can go terribly. So I'm drawing from experience. I had like my practical viva that I was going through, and which was taken online for all the other times. So I didn't really have the stress of going in front of teachers. I could just do it online, and I that kind of took a little bit out of it because I was not that nervous because I'm like, okay, until the very last moment, I just need to chill, right? It's not building up. But the thing is, since since this was taken offline, the the most recent one, and I like since I went to college, since the time that I was there till like the time that I was in front of ma'am, it was like a full build up. And even before I got to her, people like looked at my face and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you sick?" Like, there's a writing portion of the before the practical viva, and the invigilator came up to me and she's like, "Are you sick? Are you all right?" Because I knew this was coming, and it's like my body's like revving it up to like 100. I'm just going up and up and up, and then by the time I'm in front of her, she's asking my name. She's asking things that I am generally supposed to know about myself, and I'm like, I don't know. I
Oh,
truly don't know.
yeah. It's a very
Yeah.
crippling form of anxiety.
Oh my God. It was so horrid. It was so horrid. And the thing is, it's horribly embarrassing because obviously I'm supposed to look at this faculty again. And I'm supposed to meet them and talk to them. And I'm pretty like my faculty have been lucky enough to be like they're very friendly to our batch or like every batch for that reason. Very talkative and friendly. And I'm like, just that very day we had a celebration. I had to go in front of them and I was like, oh my God. I shouldn't be embarrassed of it because obviously there's nothing to be embarrassed about. But the fact that they saw me in such a vulnerable state that I had no control over, that really embarrassed me. And yeah, prolonged stress is one thing, but then a lot of people, one, they think the main problem with mental health is that people think as long as I'm a functional human being, it's okay. I think that's
Mhm,
what I was leading up to this is that
mhm.
when you have it for a short time, you don't take it as like a proper problem. I always used to be like, I don't think I have anxiety at all because I told you I have a pretty laid back personality. I have such level of ignorance to like deadlines and shit that I need to get done that you would think, oh my God, this person has no anxiety at all. But then it's only situations where it really comes down to it. And I'm like, I'm not me at all. Like I'm a completely different person. It's just I'm almost dead by that time. And so I can sit and argue being like, oh, it's just because this one particular incident. Then I saw a pattern where I'm like, oh, for me especially, it doesn't manifest in general stressful situations. This
Mhm.
is a generally stressful situation, but there are situations where like it's supposed to be enjoyable, like going out with friends or just going to like a party or something like that. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? And I'm like, oh, I'm just experiencing it. And then you just ride through it and you're like, okay, it's not a problem anymore. Because I'm
Mhm.
functional.
Mhm.
Technically, I'm being functional
Functional,
too.
exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of people confuse that when they think
Mm.
that, okay, I'm functional. All right, this can be sort of like put down in the
With
back
depression
burner.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, until it kind of like hits you really badly on one
Yeah.
fine day, and everyone is just like left gaping, and you yourself are left gaping at the situation, being
Exactly.
like,
Because
what
you never
happened to
took it as
me?
a problem. Yeah.
Because you never addressed it as a problem, which is why a lot of people say that you need to be proactive in talking to a counselor or even talking to someone, because it's not just like when you are presented with the problem you're going to approach someone. You can proactively do that in order to mitigate problems, beforehand. But what do you think is the trick in that? Like, why do people not treat it as a, like, why don't people proactively act on that? uh, what do you think is the
One, I think that's
problem
like the
there?
most common answer, and I'm going to sound like 1 million people on the internet, but there's still a lot of stigma around it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think and the way that I've been combating with this anytime in conversation with somebody, if anybody's talking about mental health, I'm not talking regards to me, I'm just talking like generally. If they're talking about mental health and for some reason they think they're disregarding it in some way, and I'm like, well, if you broke your leg, would you act the same way?
Mm-hmm.
Like equating it to some sort of physical problem that you're
Yeah.
facing, they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, you tell me that you consider mental health to be a valid thing. Why don't
Mm-hmm.
you treat it as valid as you do your physical health?
Mm-hmm.
It definitely has like some key elements that are quite different to it. Definitely does. But even so, if you take it as much, if you take it to so much value as much as your physical health, I think then it kind of makes sense. Like anytime you think you're invalidating it. So even the functional thing, there are a lot of people that are like, oh, I have a headache or I have a fever. But then as long as they can push through it and work, they're like, oh, I'm okay. I mean, it's
Yes.
there, but it's like, it's all right.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, I can just take like a paracetamol or something like that. And they'll be like, okay, I am pushing through it. It's all right. And they completely disregard it. There are people with that, but there are also people that will be, running to the hospital if something, they have cold or if they have fever or whatever. But then I'm like, yeah, but your child is also being like showing very obvious symptoms of depression, showing very obvious symptoms of like anxiety or OCD or any of the disorders that can come, and they can blatantly ignore it because one, there's lack of information. So this is one thing that I want to do. I like as a psychology student felt so passionately angry about was that I want so much information to be readily available on this. I want it to be everywhere in a way that you can't be blind to it. Like if you're telling me that you don't know about it, it's like COVID instructions. Like I know it's annoying, but then if someone's saying that, oh, I didn't know you had to wear a mask, you would be like, no, what the hell is wrong with you?
Right.
This is so obvious. I because why? Because all the you can say that because all of the warnings are everywhere. Everybody's talking about it every day. So I want things and basic things about mental health at least to be so dreadfully obvious that if someone's saying I don't know, they won't be excused for their ignorance. Instead they'll be they'll be like spoken down to for their stupidity, at least for that. And I'm not saying that it should be like negative. At least for that reason people will go and educate themselves, because
Exactly.
at this point I'm like, there is such obvious thing. Even like in my batch too with psychology students, and there are so obvious things that are happening around us where I'm like, this person's clearly messed up in this way. And there are students that react in a way that have no knowledge of mental health, no
Hmm.
consideration of mind and all of that. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
You're bound to think that if this person ends up as a counselor,
I
I wonder what's there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Thankfully, like counseling is not the only line you can go to,
Uh-huh.
thank God. And as far as I know, there are very few people that are going for counseling,
Mm-hmm.
like for counseling psychology. But still, even so, you think, and I'm not taking this as an opportunity to belittle my fellow classmates, no, but it blows your mind. I'm just saying that the ignorance about mental health and the lack of information that's out there, that at least lack of correct information that's out
Correct.
there,
Yes.
yeah, correct information that's out there is so much. Because I like the fact that you know um, there are platforms like Instagram, or just there are places where people are talking about it. And but then you have to be aware of whether you're following the right source, because
Hmm.
there are a lot of people that would be like, oh, self-love, self-motivation, and like if you're really, for some people that work, and I'm not saying that it doesn't, it really does. If you are um, kind of mentally healthy, it kind of works for you just to get that push where you just need a bunch of motivational things. But if you're basing your content and being like, it's to help people with mental health, and there are people that are of multiple degrees of being messed up, and they come to you, and some it would work, some that are not that bad it works for, and then for some that are really really down in the dumps will be like, what the hell's wrong with me? None of this, I can't make this work for me.
Yes, because we have to realize that psychology in itself is a very complex subject and it's highly subjective, also, right? So, I don't think you can just produce a set of guidelines that can be like, okay, you follow this, you follow that. Because with
Absolutely.
with an illness, or like, for example, let's just take a very obvious example, COVID. You have a sort of like a Swiss cheese kind of a model where you're like, okay, do this, do that, and you'll still be fairly safe. But
Mhm.
then with psychology or mental health, the problem is that it gets so complex that it's not good for anyone's part to just summarize it all in just like
Yeah,
3 4
yeah.
points, that yeah, you do this, self love, motivation, all of that, like you said, is easy to say and it might work for some people, but not for a lot of people, a lot of not a lot of
Mhm.
people. And I think there, the important distinction that needs to be made is, I don't know if people do that, but I'm just gonna put it out there. is whether you are doing it like if you see hints of it, or you are like clinically depressed. If you're
Yeah.
clinically depressed, or if you have any sort of clinical form of mental health issue, those things are not going to work, right? I feel like that's not going to work. Your best bet is to just like approach a counselor,
Yeah.
and if you're lucky,
Yeah.
you're going to find, if you find a good doctor or psychiatrist, you're good. But then I don't think these guidelines or these posts or talks about mental health work for
Yeah.
people who are clinically in there, right?
Yeah.
So it's
I
an important
also
distinction
think,
to make. Exactly.
yeah, absolutely. And I think rather than having like you said, it's very subjective. So having like broad guidelines is honestly a little naive to think that that's
Yeah.
gonna
Mhm.
work. But what I like about some of the things, which is what I was getting to, is that some creators are like they are actually they have the degree to put out that content, but they are taking specific situations, like specific things, and they're not saying like how to help, but they're trying to make you understand. So because in the situation, one thing I will be very honest, getting therapy is a privilege,
Right.
because let's face it, it is pretty expensive.
Mm.
And for you to, and it's not like you can just find one psychologist or one counselor and it can click and can fit. It doesn't, it can't, it's not like that.
Doesn't,
You
yeah.
kind of have to keep going. It doesn't really work like that. So it definitely is a privilege. So the only way such content can help you, i'm s- that word no longer makes sense to me anymore, the word content,
Mm.
because I've been using it so much. But the only way that it works is that, for example, there's one creator, I think her name is the holistic psychologist. I'm not
Yes,
sure.
yes, yes, yeah.
I think, yeah, yeah. So for her, we're like sponsoring and like giving everybody
Left, right, and
publicity from this
center.
episode.
Yeah.
Left, right, and center. Follow this person, listen to this person. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Listen to
Yeah.
us also, but listen to them too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so holistic psychologist. So she was talking, so she would explain like attachment styles. So nobody knows about attachment styles, but it's just, you can just read it as like a curious person. If you're just curious about, you're very curious about psychology. Right.
Very
So which is,
much.
yeah, which is why we clicked really well as friends. And because I used to talk a lot about
Yeah.
it, I'm like, oh, cool, this is fun to
Yeah.
listen to as well. Yeah. So you would find this amusing, and even though this is not probably a present problem that you might be facing, if you're just reading up about attachment styles and you're like, say, for example, you are thinking like, oh, I have an avoidant anxious attachment style, for example,
I do
and you're
have.
reading it,
Yeah.
which is why I specified. For example,
I
if you haven't accepted that about yourself,
Yes.
I'm just going to
Yes.
say, for example, I'm not
Yeah.
targeting you. So,
Smart there.
thanks.
It's a very diplomatic
Very
move.
diplomatic move on my part. Oh, God. So, for her, so yeah, you would be reading up about it. It's not like you would go and search up, hey, are some of my relationships like, is this the main problem in my relationships? This is something that you can build up on your own. That you just naturally
For
read
sure.
up. Yeah. And you're like, huh, I think I'm avoidant anxious. And you do your search on it, or you see how it affects your present adult relationships.
Yes.
And so I like content like that, where it's just, and there are content like, there are tips where it's generally like, regardless of the nature of your panic attack, if you can use different stimulus, like extreme stimulus, like for me this works if you're having a panic attack, or just even getting to a bad place, using ice works wonders for me. It does.
Ice.
Yeah, ice
Okay. Wow.
basically,
All right.
the sensation of ice, because it's really cold, so you're
Mm-hmm.
getting too much in your head, and
Mm-hmm.
your body is also,
Heating up.
really heating up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is such a stark sensation on your skin and on your mouth, that, so like either you put it in your hand, or you put it in your tongue, like on your tongue. Make sure you don't burn yourself, but still, because you can with ice skin if you directly put it on your skin.
Ah, yes, yes. Mm.
Yeah, but then make sure you don't do that. But still, the really sharp sensation of it kind of helps to, you know, helps you focus, get out of your head and focus on physical sensations.
Right,
So
right,
you
right.
can be on the path to be like focused. So it's kind of like that other thing where it's like mindfulness, where you,
Mindfulness.
yeah, where you focus on external surroundings to get out of your
Mm,
head, while
exactly.
when you see yourself going that route of like, shit, I'm going down and down and spiraling. Yeah.
That seems to work. Mindfulness definitely seems to work,
Yeah.
because one, I feel the only logical reason that I can feel like, look at, is that it gets your mind out of that thing. It's like very obvious, but then not a lot of people, they kind of like
Oh,
disregard
it takes a lot of
mindfulness.
power. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also takes a lot of power. One of my colleagues has done this, and I've put this video in the beginning of in my in the spot of this podcast. It's one of my colleagues, Rupambika. One of the things about it is the daily posts that they have are regarding mindfulness. Like, okay, what do you smell around you? What do you see around you? Okay, so all these things, I mean, I'm missing out on a lot, but I keep on like regularly checking their posts, and they post quite a lot. So I'm like, yeah, this is a good initiative, because she's trying to sell a product, which in itself is not like, has not to be viewed as like a product, like, oh, she's just trying to sell something. No, she's trying to sell a very valuable product, but on top of that, she's also getting the whole piece of mindfulness into it, which is something that's a value add, that's a very qualitative value add, and push to the
Absolutely.
market. Yeah, and I feel like that's a very good move on her part.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Smart too.
mindfulness. And like when you said that, and I'm like, yeah, this is great, because I think if this seems to be working for a lot of people, and you mentioned that, and that just sort of solidified my belief in mindfulness.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
thing. So it's kind of en route to mindfulness, because sometimes it's very difficult to get yourself started. So
Yeah.
I'm like, if you're just blindly being like, oh shit, I'm spiraling, gotta go get ice. This is how
Mhm.
I do it.
Right, there's like
In the
certain
middle of,
certain
yeah, certain
instructions that you
tests.
give your brain or yourself.
Yeah, because for example, if I'm like, because you can't give like very specific things and be like, fix this, fix that. Like, I know my anxiety shows up in very specific ways, but I can only tell my mind at that time with the low brain power that it has at that time. Because that's what you kind of drown everything out, your logic and all of that goes kind of down. At that time, I'm like, no, just be this, like very specific instructions that may not have a direct relation, but it definitely will pull me out of it. So
Mhm.
when I'm like spiraling, or I think that I'm going, that way, I'm sure it's a weird visual for my folks to be like, I'm in a messed up mood or messed up place, and I'm just trying to break ice from the freezer, but it helps.
It helps,
It
definitely
helps.
helps.
It
Yeah,
helps. Yeah. And then
yeah.
after a while, I'm like, okay, or like not after a while. Like, yeah, I'm
Mhm.
on the path to being okay, which is what's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's funny that you mentioned, because this is in line with the thing that we started initially when we said that, psychosomatic problems can occur with psycho means your mind, and soma means, for those who don't know, the breakage of more like the breakdown of the word psychosomatic. Psycho is related to mind, and soma is your body. So psychosomatic, which psychosomatic diseases would mean problems that are caused, physical problems that are caused by the problems of the brain, and soma psychotic, which means, the reverse, basically. So your body causes a problem in your mind. So basically that. And this happens, as like you said, you have to like literally incur a physiological response by rubbing ice on your body,
Yeah.
and that helps you with your mental state, which is something that's very interesting to look at, which is why I wanted to look at stress overall, and which I don't know if that falls under, if anxiety, depression, all of that like springs from it or falls under it. Is it like an umbrella term? But can we agree that it at least is like a starting point, which sort of like branches
Yeah.
off into many forms, right?
It There's more chances of things starting from stress. Yes.
Starting from stress,
Yeah.
exactly. And the reason why I also have belief in these studies that I was talking about is because when I was this is okay, I'll start with this. Basically, he talked about PAMPs and DAMPs. Seems like a very funny word, but PAMPs is basically pathogen associated molecular patterns. So what's a structure? So what's happening is
I
basically when
gotta say this just one sec. I'm so sorry for interrupting. I'm like exploding from this joke. You sound so much like that one kid in school. Just like, excuse me, ma'am, but by the way, the
yeah.
origins of this term is like half psychological and somatic. I'm like, I know this, but even so, I'm like that exact child. I'm like,
Exactly.
I
No,
know this
when
kid
you
in
find
back in
something and you
school.
find interesting, then you're like, okay, I'm just interested to know
No,
the
I
full
find
story
it
about this.
cute, but then this you couldn't look more more like that
like a
description. I'm
nerdish kid.
so sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
PAMS and DAMS, go on.
PAMS and DAMS. So basically, PAMS is your pathogen associated molecular structures, and medical people can correct me on that. I don't remember. I'm really bad with terms and full forms. So I think this is the one. So basically, what happens is basically the inflammation that is your immune system when it takes place, when it springs into action when a foreign material enters you. DAMS, on the other hand, is something that I feel like is not discussed, is basically destruction of your own cells, right? By your own immune system, which is also autoimmune, which I
Yeah,
had at the beginning
autoimmune.
of
Yeah.
2020.
Yeah.
And this
What
is
a
something.
segue to yourself, but okay.
No, this is like sort of a
What were you about to say?
evidence to confirming the whole theory about how stress can actually sort of like lead to problems.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, his hypothesis in this particular talk, where if you watch it, I recommend watching it, but then again, I'm no one to tell you what to watch. So I'll put it in the show notes. If you want to watch, you can watch. So what he says is that PAMS and DAMS both, any sort of problem can occur due to like sort of that autoimmune response, right? So immune response can occur through sort of stress. Like stress can be the triggering point. So when I went for the diagnosis of autoimmune, the first thing my doctor asked me, "Are you leading a very stressful life?" And I'm like, yes, definitely,
I
definitely.
guess you could say
Yeah,
that.
I guess you can say that. Yeah. And then he didn't, besides the medication that he gave me, definitely that worked, because I am going to stress on importance of medication as well when you are in a condition like that. But then he also added that you've got to make some lifestyle changes, and you've got to make them now in order to reduce the stress. And I did, and it did work for me in real time. So which is why this is even more important to get into the discussion of stress, because now I told you some medical research, but then you might agree or disagree. Now I'm also backing it up with my anecdotal experience, which might differ for other people, but for myself at least I can say that for most of us, stress can lead to a variety of physiological problems. And anyway, so this is what I wanted to get into. And
I think in this sense also, what I really wanted to stress on was how certain things can act as a catalyst. So what I wanted to get from that is that catalyst. So people value certain things as to be, oh, it's only 5%, it's only affecting whatever that it's affecting 5%, only 2%, only 3%, only 10%. So I don't need to take it as a cause. But the thing is, and obviously, you don't have to take it as a valid, legitimate cause, but it is aiding it 5%.
yeah.
So I think I'm someone who is like crazy about such factors. And I'll tell you, in literally a lot of aspects of my life, I do focus on catalytic factors. I think that's what it's called. I forgot. I knew this word, but I forgot. But even in depression or in anxiety, there are a lot of things where this is why it goes like badly, is that there are certain people that misunderstand it. And I've even seen quotes and things on social media where people are like, oh, you have depression, just grab a pair of running shoes and just leave your house and go for a run. Yeah, oh my god. And this comes from the fact, this is the problem, is that one thing on its own, this type of attitude is problematic for an entirely different reason. I'm just going to get to that, but I'll get to that later. But the thing is, exercise and sleep and your eating habits and all that are catalytic features. They are definitely factors that can aid you in further pushing yourself into depression or anxiety or any sort of mental disorders, especially these two. I only have personal experience with these two, but it does help if you, but obviously it's not the reason where if I'm depressed and I suddenly start doing this, I'm not going to be depressed anymore. That's not how it works. And that's where I think like misinterpretation of facts and things about mental health comes in, where people misinterpret it and then they make such sweeping statements and then everyone is like, what the hell's wrong with you? But obviously this person's wrong. It's not a reason for it. You can't just do that. But like you said, for your autoimmune disease, you were taking meds, you were taking this, but your doctor also suggested, hey, might want to try a little less stressful lifestyle, because that does help. And it did work for you in real time. Exactly like that. these things, even though it doesn't contribute a high amount to make like a huge change, if you're changing like 10 different things in your life that are considered to be bad habits or bad lifestyle choices, even though each of them contribute a very small degree, there are 10 different things that contribute a small degree. So that is enough to further push you from being like in the edge to be like a little more on the way to depression, because it's not a competition. It's not like if I get like a bus ride to pass this much distance away from depression, only then will I take it. Honestly,
Mm,
if anyone with mental illness knows, even just a step towards a good direction, they will grab at it. And you
yeah,
should, because like any disease, any step towards a positive direction, you should grab at it. And all these lifestyle choices, even though it won't push you that far, there's a lot of other things that go into it. It will make it a little bit better. And I do think people really undervalue that a little bit, but it really helps. And I'm someone that's crazy for it. Why I said is
exactly.
because um, when I started working out at a weird time in my life, where I did not know what I was going to do with my life, and I just wanted some sort of discipline, which is crazy because I'm not that disciplined like person. But for some reason, even I craved some sort of structure in my life, and I started working out then. And I was skinny, I guess. So it's not like a lot for aesthetic purposes, but it just gave me something to work towards. And so that helped me. And it doesn't, so obviously it didn't help me pull myself from the rut that I was in. I had to do a lot of mental work for that. But even so, it did kind of push me towards that direction to motivate me further to do it.
Exactly. No, so which is what takes me back to my earlier point on making that fair distinction on what stage of anything you are, right? So if you're in a clinical, so I'll pass this with like a story that I have in my family, like someone I won't mention who, but someone in my family has had experience with depression. They've had problems with anxiety and all of those things, and that is like at a clinical phase, right? So the thing is, it's very easy for us to say, and this is like a mistake that we used to make, because the thing is that I am at a stage, or anyone else in my family would be at, the younger folks in my family would be at a stage where they can be like, they can take these preventative measures like going out for a run, working out, maintaining. But when you once you're at a clinical stage, it's much more different and much more
Absolutely.
difficult for you to do it. So it's very easier
Absolutely.
for us to say that
Yeah.
do this because this has been working for us. Yes, it worked for me because I
Because you
was
were at
still
a
at
better
that
place to
preventative
start.
stage. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was at a better place to start. But it's a lot more difficult for a person who is actually taking meds, or who has
Yeah.
had like entire sleep pattern disrupted. It's a
Exactly.
very difficult thing for them to follow these guidelines that we
Mhm.
usually tell people. So it's very
Mhm.
important to make that distinction, what you are.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
And this
even
is the
with
thing. Because we don't make that distinction to begin
mm,
with, people think that this doesn't help at all. I don't have to do
this
this.
doesn't have, yeah, exactly,
So
yeah.
I'm like, no, just start with it. If you're doing that, and it's preventative, like you said, when you're in that stage, when you at least do all of these things, you're at least
Mm,
pushing yourself further off the edge from it being
mm.
very clinical and being very, very, very serious.
Yes.
Yeah.
And which is why, and also there are a lot of other distinctions to make, which I found out. I will get into some health factors that like contribute for as preventative measures, definitely. Not speaking for anyone who has clinically been associated with this, because I'm not an expert. Your safest bet is to consult a psychiatrist or a doctor, any of those things. But for those, for because I can actually offer you something in regards of preventative measures, I can say that stress can be you can go a long way in dealing with stress by controlling for certain factors, which is basically your sleep, your exercise routine, your diet, and your relationship with people, right? This is something that you have certain control over. I get that with so many things that are happening in the world, we do not have any control over those things, and it makes us even more frustrated. Say what's happening with Palestine and Israel.
Oh
It's very
gosh.
shocking, right? But do we, as individuals who are in a completely different career, we are not even involved in politics, and someone who's not even in a developed, living in a very highly developed countries that can actually, put in some foreign interventionist policies. So basically US is known for foreign interventionist policies, where they basically impose sanctions, or they go and they send their own troops into the country to discipline them, like as a measure. That is also another topic to like talk about that, but that's a very detailed topic. But are we as India, can we do something about it? Maybe people at the higher political levels can, but can we do something about it? So what I see is these increasingly, so many people, there's like, I just shut my phone down today because I was not able to deal with so much that's happening, so many visuals coming from and being reported from Palestine, or Palestine, Israel, whatever the conflict is. I had to literally shut my phone. This is what people are actually putting. Even regarding COVID deaths, people were like, I had to literally just shut my phone because I cannot deal with so many people dying. It's because people do not have any control over it. They have control over whether they can stay home and protect their loved ones and themselves, but they do not have any controls over the ones who are dying. We are very empathetic creatures.
Empathetic.
Empathetic creatures. Now what's happening is all these things, when they are just like revolving in an influx, they're just numbing our sensibilities, right? And what's happening is that we are becoming increasingly very, I don't know, we're on edge. We're getting frustrated because cannot do anything. The only thing, the thing is that whenever anything uncertain happens, what happens is usually there are certain things that you can control, but there are some things that you cannot control, and the cannot control ones are the ones that cause frustration or anxiety, right? But I feel like with all this ongoing stress, I think there are still a few things that you can control. And if you let yourself fall in the loop, I think you'll be in a danger zone. But
Yeah.
I mean, your sleep, your diet, and these things have worked for me. These things have worked for people in the various number of researches. I get that if you are someone who's like an outlier case. Okay, I get that. I'll account for that as well. But I feel like these things are something that we have a control over, and we definitely can do something about it.
Mm.
But even when you do these things, it's very important to know and study about them and your own body in order to know. Because for example, one thing that I found out, I didn't know, I was so stupid, I didn't know, there is a thing called exercise induced inflammation. So basically, higher elite exercises,
I'm so proud.
yeah. No, this is the thing.
I
It's
am so proud
I
for
was
so many
so
different reasons. You
yeah.
were such a ass to me. I still,
No.
I still, okay, guys, this is the tea here. I used to tell so sadly to Dati that I would work out and I'd say, like, I'm getting bloated up, or like, this is so weird because when I'm working out, it happens. If I take a break for like 3 days, I won't be that bloated. And I would tell you, and you would be like, what would you say? Tell me, tell me. What would you say?
I don't know. I don't. I think I did tell you to breathe properly.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like,
Yeah.
are you drinking enough water? Are
No,
you
no, 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 no.
having
So that's the thing. That's where
uh,
people have got to maintain discretion. That's the point that I'm getting to. The
yeah.
thing
And as
is
your friend, I wanted to
that
only come and meet you to choke you. Only
I'm sorry
then.
for that. But the thing is that for a long time, I didn't know about this, that we're only supposed to do moderate exercise.
Mm.
And again, in this video, if you see, you'll know something about the J curve and your increased risk of lung infection if you're doing nothing and if you're doing too much.
Mm.
So basically, if as a normal person who's not an athlete, an elite level athlete, if you're doing like very intense exercises when it's not
Yeah.
needed, you're causing inflammation. Now that's happening with athletes as well, but they have very detailed guidelines and curriculum. They have these coaches to tell them, okay, this is what is the problem is, so this is what you got to do. Actually people can these sports people, way before COVID happened, they were not supposed to interact because they are at an increased risk of infections, because they are
Wow.
working at a very elite, they're training at an elite level. Now there are reasons why they have to train at elite levels, but then the thing is that has to be compensated with coach a good coach who can provide you good guidelines, and they're given very, very specific guidelines in order to deal with that. Which is why, people hear that, oh, some runner got like COVID, and well, these people are supposed to deal with it. But if you actually look at the story, you're not supposed to
They're more
exercise too
likely to
much,
get it.
because then that will
Yeah.
also induce inflammation, which can sort of harm your own cells,
I'll
right?
stop. I'm
No,
gonna be
I mean,
lazy
there is a
from now
moderate
on.
level at which everything is see, like they say,
No,
balance is
I heard you
everything.
loud and clear. I'm gonna be lazy from now on. I'm not doing anything from
Lazy,
now
see, that's the
on.
thing, that's the point of the J curve. The laziest you
Mhm.
are and the highest, whatever the extreme things, that when you're at extreme ends, you want to be at the middle of the bell curve, so to speak. So you don't want to be at extreme ends. If you're, so for example, if you're just an average person who just wants to maintain fitness, right?
Ouch.
Don't go
Okay.
for these very intense regimes. Just know what works for you. So which is why
Sure.
what I urge people to do every time, just know your body, guys. It's not a very difficult thing, right? And see what works for you, because someone can tell you, oh, you need to work out and feel good. That happens, but when you do it in the right amount,
On a
some people,
serious note, yeah.
yeah, some
Yeah,
people black
absolutely.
out. Do you know that? Do you know that
I do.
exercise reaches the no, I'm just like telling people that
Oh,
people
I do.
wear it as a badge of
I don't know
honor.
if you do.
I have lost track sometimes, but because that adrenaline pathway that sort of like, instigates, and you're like, oh shit, I want to do more. But
I've
you've got to know
gotten
your limits.
where there are times that I've been like, this is so stupid to say, but then let's normalize doing normal workouts for people, but then you skipped a lot of days, so you do it, and then you're like, oh shit, what's going on? This has happened to me, where my body is like, we were lazy for so long. Don't
What
do this to
happened?
me. What
Hey,
happened?
I'm
Hey, listen.
lethargic.
Yeah, what's up with you? Can't you just lay in bed for like a little bit longer? Like, why are we doing this now? And I've just had like black spots on my eyes or like something like that. But I'm
Mm.
looking around, I'm like, oh my god, why did I
See,
do
that's the
this to
thing.
myself? And it's not very
Exactly.
intense, but that's the thing. Know your body, like you said.
Know your
I was joking
body.
around throughout your entire
No,
thing, but
but this is also backed up by recent video that I watched. And guys, do check out Huberman Lab. He's amazing. He is my
sponsorship,
favorite. He's my
sponsorship,
hero.
sponsorship,
Yeah,
sponsorship.
publicity, publicity, publicity. I don't think I have like enough money to sponsor people. Well, I need sponsorships, man. Yeah.
I'm saying that that's what they technically have to pay you. I'm saying sponsorship so that you get paid for
Okay.
talking about them.
Right.
Yeah, where we
Oh,
chose
okay,
a
okay.
couple of people. Oh my gosh, this is the problem. You're
No,
not tricky enough. I
nah,
am
no
business
longer.
minded. You are too innocent. I'm like, I'm like, I get you money. You're like, no, I don't want. I'm like, oh my
Yeah, we
god.
want to keep it clean. No money. Hush, hush. That's to be spoken like offline. To pretend in front of the people that it's fine. No,
I
anyway,
only care about the consent, you guys.
on a
No
fair
money,
note, no one is taking any sort of sponsorships.
of
And
course.
this is not, because this is just like supporting other people who are doing some great work. And Andrew Huberman,
Exactly.
according to me, is doing amazing work. And this is what he spoke about. He's like, excessive temperature is not good for your body, right? The thing is, one of the interesting things, that's why I took it seriously, because he said,
Says the Himachali native. Moving on.
no, no, as Himachal people also, we get fried up sometimes because the sun is too like on top of us all the time, breathing down our necks. So yeah, what he said, that if your brain gets hot, that's a problem, because that can kill your neurons. Now, the interesting part is the neurogenesis, the part of neurogenesis where you produce more neurons, right, in your brain. This process gets slowed down once you are, mature into adulthood. So it's a until puberty it's good, but after that it's very minimal. So he's like, you don't want to lose neurons, guys. On top of that, the production is very less, and then you want to
How
lose
does
also.
your yeah, that's
Yeah.
like that's like when my teacher told me, "We'll cut your marks," and I'm like, "This very little to cut from. I don't know what you're going for here." I'm like,
Exactly.
"This is not an
Fair
effective
analogy.
threat to me."
Yeah, this is a
But
fair
yeah,
analogy. Yeah,
but I had
calm
to
down.
ask you, calm down, use a different strategy. Because this is thinking, I'm thinking very logically. I'm like, I don't know where you're gonna cut from, but so I just wanted to ask you how does one's brain heat up? What processes
It's
lead to that in daily life
basically
habits?
you don't want to heat your body too much, And now the thing is that according to what I understood from the video, and I might not be right, it's basically there's a thermostat in your brain which sort of tries to dump heat from your body. So which is why you have like more, sweat here, you have sweat everywhere. So basically that's the heat dumping thing. But they say that the thermostat is in your body. You might have heard about homeostasis.
Mhm.
Homeostasis is the ability of your
Maintain
body
the
to
body
maintain
temperature.
a certain temperature. But then if it gets too heated, it's not good. If it gets too cold, it's not good. Like I said, balance is key every time. So basically, if that thermostat like goes way up, you don't want to do that. And you know what he said, that is one thing that if you overdo exercising, you can also die. One of the things that the dire situations that he just put out there is like you can
Fun.
die. And blackouts is like like a little milder version of that. Like at least okay, your brain is like, protect yourself, protect yourself. Yeah. So
I'm
which
gonna
is
just be
why
super dramatic and use this for attention. I'm gonna be like, Mom, I almost died today.
exactly, you almost died, have half a death.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Just a
So
little one.
yeah, but obviously don't take my word for the as a grain of salt, because you will benefit from him talking about it rather than me. My job is just to point you out towards it and sort of like give you like a little bait, like, hey, this is an interesting stuff, do check that out, but definitely don't take my word. You might want to check that video out. It's very like he does it all alone. He'll sit in front of a camera with his notes on and he'll explain. He's a Stanford, he works at Stanford as well, so credibility 100x. So it's a very good channel to actually look at if you want to look
I
at
also
neuroscience.
intend on starting stream of consciousness. I don't have credibility, but please listen.
Yes.
You're
Exactly.
like credibility 100x. I'm like, cool. I feel personally targeted. Does anyone need like advice from a bad source?
No, but then
Right here.
medical advice is something that you cannot play around with, right?
Yeah, I
There are
think if
certain things.
somebody
Yeah.
sees this into this like podcast, they're gonna be like, okay, we're probably gonna be listening to like if you
Hmm.
feel lonely and you want to
Hmm.
hear one of your annoying friends talk to you, that would be more of mine.
Exactly.
Yeah, more
That
than
is true.
something that's like
Yeah.
very educational.
So yeah, this was one. Exercise was one. The other aspect of it was obviously sleep, which is like needless to say, yes, certain people have like a genetic, genetic, what would we call it, like a blessing, that they can operate on less sleep. But for most of us, the reality is that one day, for me, even one night gets fucked up and the second day I'm like, oh shit, kill me already, I cannot like survive
I
this.
know.
I can't survive life.
You get
Yeah.
stupid towards the end of the night.
So extremely
All the
stupid
time.
because there's extreme brain fog and there's like so much confusion and there's like this constant headache. And I do know that, yes. But
You're
so
more
yes,
stupid then.
less sleep makes you stupid. Very
Mhm.
important note to make. And for someone who has like this constant anxiety of not being as smart, not being viewed as smart, it's like a huge problem for me. So I've got to get more sleep.
Yeah, I
So
stay up with no shame. I don't care.
yeah, for certain people, definitely not a problem, but for
Yeah.
most of them there is. And a lot of people, obviously a lot of research, I'm going to just put something so just to interest you so that you can look at sleep as well. And basically sleep is the time when your body takes the time to recover. I know you might have heard it a lot, but the science behind that is like, just we have lymphatic system in our body, we have the glymphatic system in our brain, which sort of like removes all the toxins in your brains during the time. And this thing happens during the time of your deep sleep. When you're in your sleep stages, this is when the glymphatic system through glial cells removes all the toxins in your brain. One thing that they talked about was like this association with Alzheimer's. How I'm not, it's not for certain definitely, but there's like a correlation that they saw, that if you do not get proper sleep, there is this accumulation of this protein called amyloid beta, which gets accumulated in your brain, right? And that has been seen in Alzheimer's patients as well, that accumulation of that protein, which needs to be like removed. So that can only be, those toxins can only be removed when you're in deep sleep. So if you're not having deep sleep, not only are you hampering your body's ability to recover, but also your brain's ability to sort of flush out all those toxins, right? And which is why I feel like they also had a compelling case for brain fog and all those things. Definitely worth looking at the research. But anecdotal experience, or like experience from self, definitely more I sleep, typically 7 to 8 hours of more deep sleep, slow wave deep sleep, the more I get, the more active I am tomorrow. Like
Quality of sleep too.
exactly, like
Important.
it's what time is it? It's 8:30. Quality sleep, exactly. It's 8:30. I slept well. I did two podcasts before that, one podcast before this, and a talk with my meetup with my old friends. I would have been tired by now, like sitting in the front of the computer like every time. I would have been tired by now, but it's just like I feel like not only sleep with workout and with proper diet has worked like in my favor here.
Yeah.
So definitely.
It was
So
more energetic day after like working out.
exactly. So how does
Yeah.
that play out for you if I were to ask you? How does that,
Sleep.
like, yeah, sleep, diet, exercising, how does that kind of like do the trick for you? Like how does that affect you?
Yeah. Okay. So wow, I have a very complicated relationship with sleep.
Hmm.
So I'm one of those people that that part of your body that's like that after 8 hours of sleep, they're like enough, get up. Yeah, I don't have that.
Hmm.
So I can just probably like completely miss like 2 days if I allow myself to go through that, which is why I have like copious amounts of coffee. Like my friends make fun of me because I have like 2 cups of coffee or whatever during the day. Like I get up in the morning and do it, and it's not. I would have like 10 hours of sleep. It's not for me to stay awake like, oh, because I had little sleep. It's more so that I had enough sleep, and because my body seems to crave more and more, I need to stop it. And to be normal, I need coffee.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And I also don't have the problem of like I don't get like a lot of brain fog during the night. Like it's maybe
During the
because of
night.
the excessive sleep, probably. Yeah, during the night I
Aha.
don't get a lot of, like, for you too. Like I tend to be, probably because of this, like I said, it's like I get a lot of sleep. So that too. So for me, sleep is like a struggle where I will have a day where if I haven't had coffee, it's like I'm struggling to be like a normal person. And it's almost like I haven't slept. I have
Hmm.
that amount of exhaustion. So I'm not going to talk about sleep and how it affects me. This is the way that it affects me. I'm trying to like, I use external things to stay awake as opposed to not
Right.
sleeping. Um, then I don't know if that's actually a problem. I've been telling it to people, but then I don't know if it's a proper thing. It's an issue.
See, I don't want to confirm my own things here. Definitely, I want to like look at more evidence about and talk to people about how this is for them. Definitely, but then isn't it like worth sort of like considering that whatever your sleep patterns might be, you might feel like they might not affect you, right, in the current term, but long term they could have some invisible effects on you,
No,
like.
absolutely. I am constantly working towards like getting only 8 hours. So this is the thing, how it is for me is that, like you said, 8 hours of sleep is something. I time it and I make sure that I have to get up and I force my body. And the thing is, during the pandemic, so this I had mentioned before, because a lot of things you tend to slack off in the pandemic because we don't have the motivation, the deadlines or normal social interactions have. Like you need to get up to go somewhere. I don't have anywhere to go. Like if I, even when college was going on, I just had to open up my phone. I can do that very easily in my bed and all of that. Like I don't have to fully get up and go through the motions of the day to actually do that. But that's the thing. Oh my gosh, I would force myself to get 8 hours sleep, and then my brain would not function without coffee. It's like my brain needs more sleep, and it's
Okay.
forcing my body. It's like
Mm-hmm.
very paralyzing. So imagine you get 8 hours of sleep, you wake up and you can't listen or talk, or like you're walking around and you're interacting and your eyes are drooping and you're falling and it's like your body's pulling you down to go
Right,
to
right.
sleep.
I don't know if it's too early to diagnose you with narcolepsy, but
Oh
yeah.
my god, I swear I might as well be. Do you know my classmates used to make fun of me because, not make fun of me, like they used to tease me because we went on a trip. I think this was long time ago. Okay, no, not COVID or anything. It was like first year or something. We were walking on a train. We kept running from like different compartments to compartments, different trains. And I didn't want to touch any part of the train. I literally scooted down, sat like this, only my feet and I think a bit of my butt that's touching the floor, and I slept like that. and I
Wow.
could
Yeah.
sleep
Okay.
in a
I think
moving
you did.
train like that. And they were like, "Oh my
Even more
God, what?"
compelling evidence.
I swear to
Yeah.
God. And they were fascinated. They were like, "What the hell? How can someone?"
Right.
Because it's common for like you to sleep in class or you to sleep in a bench or whatever else. But then this is like a problem, and I don't know.
Right. Right.
Automatically, my body feels drowsy. So I don't know if
Hmm.
something's wrong with me or not. Someone's if this gets put into the podcast, someone in the comments, if you're a doctor, please tell me what is wrong with me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yours is, yeah, like I said, yours is a bit out of a outlier case here. I
Hmm.
wouldn't say that it doesn't, yeah, it's not like you're what something's wrong with it, definitely. But there definitely need
You
to
can say
look at,
that. It's okay.
we know we need to look at this case as well, like if you want to see all these things holistically. But
Mhm.
if you were to give like these general,
Oh yeah,
so just
I
for
will
like
say that.
dealing with stress,
Yeah,
I
parts where I'm a
guess,
normal human being, I will
yeah,
tell you.
right. So,
Sleep, not so much. So diet and exercise, I will say this much.
yeah.
I have to say this. I don't think I'm normal in terms of sleep, but in other
Hmm.
parts. So exercise worked wonderfully for me, where I would have this thing where I can actually tell, and this is not placebo. I swear it's not placebo because I would have given anything for this not to be true because I'm very lazy. But there are days where I would work out and I would. When back in long time ago when I used to attend college and I was in hostel, long time ago, I used to get up at 6 o'clock and I would work out, take a shower, and then I'd get ready for college and go and all of that. And that was working great for me. And the reason why, and if one day, like for some reason, I woke up late and I wasn't able to do that, I would just took a shower, just walked out. That day, I would just be just a bit more sluggish. But the thing is, since it was a habit, it's not going to pull me down that much. But just that one day made a huge difference, where I would just be a little less, little more sluggish. I had when you work out, this is the thing, such a common thing that people speak about, but then it's a thing like if someone's doing it, I'm already up. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. You're so energetic. You don't sit to think like, oh, okay, yeah. And your body wants to. It's kind of like drunk off of doing those things. And it's so
Definitely.
energetic. Oh
Definitely.
my God. That's like the
Yeah.
best thing of exercise is that you I am someone who moves very little. I'm not someone that fiddles a lot. So it is very difficult for me to be like if someone's saying that just to get up and pump up and like, okay, let's go. Not very that much of a moving person. This podcast might say otherwise. I'm a little nervous. But yeah, and you get that attitude, right? Like for let's go do this. Oh, you want to do this? I have no before I come up with excuses, my body is already moving to be like, no, let's do
Mm,
this for sure.
mm.
And that attitude is something that I definitely appreciate, and I attribute that to exercise.
Yeah. No, that is
Um,
that is the thing. Actually, I tested this for myself, like in real time. So last week, last week actually I had like a pretty bad, rough week in terms of like just like general health, and I was feeling very off and all of those things. And then this week, what I did was I just tried this experiment in real time. I sort of started like I just put off my screens. Basically, I didn't involve with my phone that much because I knew that for my work I have to interact. So there's no choice. So I'm just gonna cut out everything that I can control. So basically, if you looked at my digital screen time like every day for the last past week, it'd be like 20 minutes, 25 minutes, like that, 30 minutes, 42, just like below 1 hour. And so I try to spend more time, like when I get off my work, I am gonna try to spend more time outside. Like I used to do yoga in the beginning in the morning, and then like do some other exercise and take my vitamin D supplements, like natural vitamin D. So like go out in the go out in the sun. Very effective. There's the science behind that as well. And then in the evening, when I'm done with my work, I'll go for a run or a walk with my brother towards like uphill. And the thing is that we don't have like a lot of people around here, so we can actually afford to go. So if you think that I'm being COVID irresponsible, no, that's not the thing. There's a place for
we
it.
both are in very isolated areas, so it's
Yeah,
like
we
what
live in
works.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we go for this run, and then I noticed this utmost amount of energy throughout the day that I could maintain it. And just because I was not training myself in my phone, engaged with so many things, I'm like, okay, I have a podcast, but fuck that. I don't. I actually want to balance my life. It's not like I want to look at my numbers, like, oh, let's see how it is. It's like, no, let's just stay away from that.
Yeah.
And then this reducing my digital screen time. And the thing is that I didn't find it difficult. Again, I don't want to say, you can be like, oh, maybe it's easier for you because you're working and all of that. Yeah, maybe. But then when I saw that there is a difference, like when I actually intervened a bit and be like, you know, just don't do that, and sort of like engage yourself in more workout and all of those things, and then other things, and in external environments, which we seem to have forgotten also because of the pandemic maybe. So I saw that in real time, that it worked, and it worked wonders. The amount of like energy I faced, the amount of all of those things, that the change in the moods and everything, and also because owing to like a good diet, it's like perfect, perfect. So I think these things, these health confounders, I would say, I don't know, are worth looking at, are worth considering. Might not work for you, maybe whatever I say might not work for you, you operate on a different physiology altogether, but it's worth considering if it's like being mentioned in a lot of research, and a lot of people are also facing that, maybe it might work for you. But also, if you do not fall into any of those categories where these things don't work for you, probably just do your own research, which is like the whole idea of the entire podcast. So the one thing done with mental sorry health factors. Now I wanted to look like very interested in knowing about how people are just dealing with the fact that they're locked in their homes. Like obviously a mechanism kicks in and you want to change things. So I want to personally look at what you do, and then probably just like jump into what other people do as well. But what you do in order to deal with things when things get a little heavy, because obviously your brain knows, you people are smart enough to know, like people are smart enough in general to deal with things, because obviously it's self-preservation. So I
Mhm.
want to look at when there is a pandemic and you are uncertain about when it's gonna, like, when the
What's
lockdown is
going
gonna
on?
lift
Yeah.
up. How do you deal with it with everyday life, or even like life in general? Yeah, I want to look at that from like various perspectives.
So, yeah, how do I deal with pandemic stress? So it's been going on for, oh gosh, I've had phases. Thankfully,
Mm.
now I've stabilized because my body has just adapted to like, cool, we're not leaving home. So
Anytime soon.
anytime soon. So we're just like, yeah, good to mention anytime soon. But we're not leaving home anytime soon. But then at first, I think it also has to I learned a lot of things about myself. So, like I said before, there are a lot of catalytic features or factors, catalytic
Mm.
features or factors that go into it. And for me, um, how that like materialized was I didn't know that living quarters could do so much to my head, like wherever that I'm staying in, and whether I have, and it's not whether like it's a nice place. Like obviously you need to be comfortable, you need to be in a good place. Not that. I'm not talking about that. But I need certain things to I need certain areas to be like for one activity. Like I realized that I can't have like one table for everything that I do, or one area for like everything that I do. And at that time, my parents and I were kind of sharing a room for like sleeping. Otherwise, I used to make sure that I'd be somewhere in the other part of the house. I love my folks, but it's kind of hard to be around them all the time. Like everybody has been facing to be in your house all the time. You get sick of yourself. It's no surprise that you get sick of other people that you're living with. But I had only one place to be where I was like studying. Like I used to attend online classes. Like a good girl, I used to open my laptop and sit and attend my online classes. And if I had to do anything, it was just in that one area. So it really frustrated my mind. And I couldn't tell until this particular situation unfolded that I had a problem with this. But I couldn't deal with having a very stable, just sitting and listening to classes and in that same place actually sit and study, because all of this I have a different mindset for, or sit and paint. So I paint, and fun fact, I paint. So I couldn't do this. And how that came about was that I realized, one, I literally moved into another room. All right. So how I tried to change this was by I one, I understood, like I told you before, I think a lot of us, at least for me, I got my motivation from deadlines or someone else pushing it for me. So the pandemic really makes it, because there's no hurry to do all of these hobbies. Like I can sit on my phone, like I can sit on my phone if I want to. I can watch Netflix after class if I want to, and use that as a time that I'm gonna use that activity as a thing that I'm gonna do after I attend classes. But so no one's gonna force me to be like, oh, get out of your phone, walk around, get out of your phone, and paint or do something that's productive, that's a hobby of yours that you need to cultivate and keep going. And I'm kind of used to making time for it in regular life, but in this warped reality that we were all thrown into, I really did not know how to deal with that. And this is how I did it, where I made like different areas of the same room cater to different activities. And I made sure that I kept, because your mind gets dull when you go into the same place and do every activity for. Like I would have like one table if I'm attending online classes. That's one table. Go into a different area of the room to sit and study if I want to. Um, Go in and sit into a different area. At least change up the setting a little bit if I want to sit and paint. Change up into a little setting. I would literally go, or even something as stupid as sitting in the next chair would help, because all of that prevents your mind from just going numb, because every day you're kind of limited to the activities that you're allowed to do at home alone. So that helped, one. Two, as the routine set in, I kind of realized that you kind of have to, oh my God, this is going to sound so annoying and pretentious, but you kind of have to be your own motivator. You kind of have to be like, okay, I'm going to do this today, and kind of be your own disciplinarian too. Where I had to force myself, like you said last week that you did this no phone thing. I did this too. And I don't have any work thing to get to. I literally just put my phone away and I'm like, let's see how, like, if one day I'm just not going to be on my phone. And I'm like, at first, I'm like, what am I going to do? Because I'm so used to like my classes got over, so and my exams got postponed, so I'm like, I don't know what the hell to do. And what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, well, if this phone doesn't, so this is how I think, even in terms of people, that if I'm like trying to break away from people, I'm gonna be like, well, I survived before without this person, so I can go on. So I'm like, what if this phone did not exist? Or what if this wasn't something that was so constant in my life? How would I be? And you kind of have to do that for yourself. You kind of have to be like, let me be creative this way, let me try this new activity this way, let me force myself to not use my phone all that much.
I've been coping with the pandemic situation by challenging myself every day. Currently, I'm trying to get into the 5 a.m. morning club, which is quite hard to do, but it's worth it in the end.
Things that help me deal with the pandemic are work, as it keeps me busy and occupied during the day, staying connected with my friends, and taking up new hobbies like learning how to play a guitar or reading a book.
Okay, so things that help me deal with the pandemic. Uh, First and foremost, I would say keeping in touch with friends. It makes me realize that I'm not alone in this mess. And second, I would give credit to watching limited news, because there's just too much of it out there and it just helps me keep sane.
So yeah, now that that was what you want to say basically is that change of space or rotation of space is very important. But that has helped a lot of people, even just because first of all, our minds can get really bored with just seeing one thing. That's like a basic there fundamental truth there. So the change of space and rotation of spaces helps people a lot. For me personally, I think a lot of things, other things work. For example, board games, playing it with my parents, or just like having discussions. And now they've started podcasts. And but if you were to look at things which were like outside the digital realm, uh other than like cliche, I love reading. So I like sort of like try to navigate through across different books and genres and all of those things. Then for a while tried to learn the keyboard, because music is the ultimate therapy. I am also trying to cultivate my taste in like classical music, like Chopin and all. I've posted a story today. It's Bach, Chopin, yeah, this one, what is that, Beethoven. It's a wonderful music, but you have to develop a taste for it. And then they're like my favorite, that I tell everyone. Tony Anderson is like my favorite. It's like my bae. Yeah, I'm gonna send you a video if you just tell me if you like it.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like he's my soulmate. But anyway, so so certain things that I noticed. Anyway, so music is ultimate therapy. Obviously, workout for me is like,
Yeah.
well,
I know.
ultimate therapy. And then I am also involved in elite sports, like in an elite sport, that is my shooting, which I've stopped for a while, but then that was also something. So there was like there is a lot of engagement with the outside world if I have to like skip, and that kind of helps one a lot. Now I agree. Now I get that people do not have like a lot of avenues out there. Depending on the city that you're living, you probably cannot even step out of your house. But do look for, because we are not here to tell you, that this is what you should do and this is how you do. Look for like things that you can change around.
Yeah.
Just like it'll be a better.
The taking away your phone thing is literally just forcing your mind to be like, what would you have done if this was not here?
Yes, exactly. And then that's when the creativity kicks in,
Yeah.
and which is good. Apart from that, I really wanted to look at, you do art. You are involved in art for a very long time. How long have you been involved with this?
Oh
How
my
long have you been an
God.
artist?
Ever since. Oh gosh. No.
Not a professional one,
Firstly,
but yes,
no.
in your hearts, you're an artist.
Yeah, I think I like art so much because it's that it's this person that you can it's this person that's so wonderfully smart and amazing and perfect, but you can approach it and not be intimidated. It's very welcoming, and you can be like, it doesn't judge, it doesn't. So I told you I've been involved in art for, I think, ever since I could even move my hands. It was like tiny doodles, and then I would color a lot and sketch a lot, and something that my parents hated was that every time instead of studying, I'd be drawing in the notebooks, because we had those things where uh, obviously most schools had this. I think English teachers would do this. Most language teachers would do this. If they're teaching a chapter, there'd be those certain words that you'd have, right? You'd learn in the chapter specific words, like big words. I'm talking about very small grade, third grade, fourth grade, that. And in that chapter, there'll be a picture in the textbook. And my English teacher and Hindi teacher used to make everybody, not mine, not only for me, but everybody, you have to draw something that depicts of whatever that is an image that you've gotten from that chapter. And my God, just for that, I would do like I would do the so this is how it is when you open up the book for that chapter. You're supposed to have one side where the drawing is there, whatever that you whatever image that you have of that story. So it can be a scene that was in the textbook or not. It can be whatever that you want. I think the teachers just want you to engage. And so sad, right? So, so one side, and then the second side, you have to do like meanings and opposites and definitions and all of that. So just so that, like, obviously I can't just sketch and then keep this blank, right? So just for doing this, I would do this properly and well. And then after that's like question and answers and all that. Why do I remember this so vividly? But this was like my favorite part of like class, where they would ask us to draw, and I would draw this as like, this is the one homework that I'd be like so on board for. I'd be like, oh, I want to do this. So ever since, like, I remember all things that were pleasant for me and all things that were so joyful to me, and things I didn't feel like a pressure to be good at. Art was something that was so comforting to me because of that. I don't think anybody gives a shit. If
Right.
you can do something, and then I still carry that attitude. I've
Yeah.
been doing this for years or something like that. And people will be like, you're really good at it. I'm like, not really. But this is, I like that that's the thing that you could do where you don't have to be good at it. Where my best friend also sketches. Lami also sketches like crazy. And the other day she said, I was painting something and she's like, I've never had your attitude about it. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I was messing up, but I simply did not care.
Right.
Kept going. That's the sort of attitude that I have. And this
Mhm.
is one thing that I could constantly keep that attitude on for. And it wouldn't really mess with anything. No one's coming and policing me for making
Yeah. Mhm.
making bad art, and it gives me so much joy. But now, why I laughed at the artist thing, I think we discussed this before the podcast started, is that this type of art that I've been doing, at least one or two pieces that I've done that is similar to this style. What was the word that I'd use for it? I completely
Uh,
forgot.
gooish or what?
Goish or something. Goish.
Goish,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah.
Again, I don't even know how to pronounce it. And then the other day we were talking, and she was like, you've done a couple of pieces that match up to this, like the style. And I was like, Pinterest, I was on Pinterest searching up sketches that were aligning with such a style. And I'm like, I've done this, I've done this quite a bit, and I did not even know. So I'm like, this proves that I'm so not formal. I so can't be called an artist. I don't know what I'm
Yes,
doing.
but
I
it's
just
not
happen
about
to do it.
if only if your art is out on display or any of those things that you can
Uh-huh.
be deemed an artist. I feel like I would call anyone an artist who knows how to channelize their inner emotions, whether dark or what's the opposite of dark, bright. But I don't think we can say bright emotions, but happy emotions. If you
Mhm.
can find a way, if you can find a creative outlet and present it in a way that makes sense to you and that relieves you of all the burden of carrying those emotions inside you, I feel like you are, it's safe to call you an artist, right? It's not necessarily that
Thank
if
you.
your paintings are being auctioned at like 1 billion or 3 billion or
Oh yeah.
whatever amount, it's not only then that you're called an artist.
Mm.
Also, your artistic nature is also reflected in your background, the way you've set up your room, the lights, the paints. You chose everything. You
I
chose
chose
everything.
everything.
You were so neurotic about everything that you wanted your room to be just so fucking perfect with all the colors, the lavender walls, and like slightly lavender walls, and then
Yeah,
the
they are.
minimalistic table that I see in the background is just I love the confluence of colors and everything, the colors that are there in the screen. It's just like a wonderful interplay. And it kind of reflects in the way you, yeah,
Absolutely.
actual work
Yeah.
was done by someone else, but you were the one who was like, I want this to be in this particular way. So
I have painted my
you have a
cupboards.
penchant for
So
interior designing as well.
I do. Yeah. I am an artistic person in the sense that my thoughts, and I'm very much of a in other words, I could say that I'm shallow, but I do appreciate beauty in every aspect. I mean, like people too, like if someone looks very artistic, and I mean that in the sense that they look like a painting or they look like a sculpture, I do tend to notice them, not in terms of being attracted to them, but you just tend to be taken aback by, wow,
Yeah.
that's I feel like I'm like, wow, this is just so, it's so crazy to me that people like that walk around and exist, and I'm a creep, so I stare. So, but all of it. So even things like this, it affects my mood a lot, and that's what I was talking about during the pandemic. I didn't have that necessarily because we were living in a different house. We were very nomadic in that way. We would keep jumping back and forth from Ernakulam. And we didn't have like a proper house or anything, and before we moved in here, and it bothered me that the house was very clean, was very homey because my mom's involved, she does make it that way. But I didn't know this was a problem in my head where I need certain artistic elements in the room for me not to lose my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And my literal thing to that is I went to it very literally. I had my easel set up constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Conveniently enough, my brother bought me an easel at that time. But yeah, I had my easel set up all the
It
time.
was from Itsy Bitsy. I remember how crazy you were for Itsy Bitsy.
Anyone is a Bangalore listener, you would know. If you're even a bit crafty, you
Yeah.
would know. Itsy Bitsy is like the shit. Are you joking? Itsy Bitsy is like, it's supposed to be where you're at. If I want to go somewhere before I die, so take me
Mhm.
to a front of Itsy Bitsy. Oh my gosh. Because it's very, because it ranges, it's a very diverse set of why I like Etsy specifically also there's a reason. Because there are other art stores that I found in Kerala too. They're very formal about they're like very you know the people around there know what the hell they're doing. So I feel really intimidated to go in there. I'm like, okay, I'm so obviously because me and Lau would go in these places and I'd be like, we'd look at these simple things and we'd squeal. And there are very serious artists that are walking around. I'm like, okay, this is awkward. And we clearly look like we do use those things, but we're just so excited. We have such a very childish,
Childlike
yeah, we're very
fascination. Yeah.
childlike fascination to it. Even now, despite the fact that she and I both started getting involved in arts and crafts at a very young age,
Right.
we still have that childlike fascination. And Itsy Bitsy is like made for that. Like they've arranged things so you can lose your mind over it. So
Right.
yeah, they've really
Yeah.
spoiled me. I really
Mhm.
miss.
So no, this is wonderful, and we have been friends, but then I never saw you in this light of this collective light of like, okay, you paint, you draw, you sketch. You also have like a penchant for interior design, and all of
Mhm.
that combined just made me look at you in a different pun intended light, because obviously your light is like shining and it's like a spotlight there. I think you've put spotlights out there in the background. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, that just made me look at you, and this is wonderful. Like
Is
I
it
can
obvious I'm a
actually
narcissist? Just have spotlights across the
I think the greatest artists were like narcissists. So I would say,
probably why.
yeah. So anyway, I the one thing that I'm more interested in like finding out, because I am only like an art enthusiast, if I can call myself
Mhm.
that.
Oh,
Maybe like
you
I
are.
can't
You
do
most
much.
definitely are.
I
Yeah.
can't do, but I appreciate good art. And which is like back and forth what we've been doing. Like you draw something, you paint something, and then you're like, I drew this. And I'm like, wow, this is, and then we go through details of it. Which is something that I want to consider for this podcast as well, where I want to
Oh,
look at, okay, so two things, right? First is, I'm sorry to like introduce bifurcation into this thing, which is like a highly logical thing, like so far from creative and stuff. But
mhm.
let's just look at one first. Whenever you are inundated with dark emotions in your life, which kind of take a hold over
Mhm.
that particular time, over you for that particular
Mhm.
time, explain first that like how do you deal, how does art come into it, and if you have like any pieces with you which you can probably like put on right now for display, where you can be like, hey, this is what I do, this is what the state of mind that I had, this was the state of mind I had, and this is how I sort of like channelized it through art. And then probably we can look at like the happy times where you're like, I saw something, I had a creative
Yeah.
enlightenment or something, I had this light bulb glued, I'm like, I'm gonna put this on paper. And you were
Mhm.
so excited you could barely control yourself. And like, how did you channelize that into your into the medium through art? So
Okay. All
yeah,
right.
I mean, take your
Okay.
time. I know that's like a loaded
It's a
question, but
loaded question for sure. So three parts, right? Dark. So I'll be very, very honest with you. When I'm going through like a dark time or like a really dark place, there will be a creative outlet would help, but not related to the topic. And what I mean by that is that the activity of painting or doing it, the just pure action of it calms me down. But if I'm going to do it based on all the darkness that's going on or whatever bad place that I'm in, it doesn't really help me take my mind away from it.
okay. Hmm.
So I generally at those times would prefer to do something that doesn't mean a lot to me
Hmm.
and that I'm just so I can focus on the details of it and it has no relation to my mind.
Hmm.
So I tend to be very disconnected from my art in terms of how I'm feeling at that particular moment.
Hmm.
But that piece at that moment would be very detailed and it would have a lot of emotion in it in terms of if I'm angry, it would be aggressive strokes and all of that.
Right.
Only in that sense of the uh, term, or in that sense of
The
my
word.
emotion,
Hmm.
yeah, and then that sense of word, would my emotions show in that? Otherwise, it's just the activity of me being able to do it. Because I remember, so this is the thing. Again, this is like a childhood memory thing. But then I was like perpetually a lazy child. I would sleep all the time, just to do. But my parents were like taken aback because
Narcolepsy, I'm telling you.
this episode should be like, art also, is she okay? Does she have narcolepsy? It's genuine questions. Stress, art, also narcolepsy, question mark. So um I took apart one of my dresses and I made a bag out of it. So, and it's not like a hack way where I just made it a bag, like I tied it up or like did it. I only knew hand stitching at the time. This was like when I was like 14
And
or
you knew
12.
hand stitching then? Wow.
No, it's just like simple up and down stitching.
Really?
Like
I can't
everybody
even
know.
do that. So okay, maybe I am like I
No,
am
it's like
dumb.
the very basic stitching where like if a button comes off or like you need to just fix a seam, it's just the basic up and like, yeah.
People know that. Are you telling me that this is common knowledge among folks that like you
This
and
is-
I, if we lose our button, we're gonna like stitch it? Because I do not really know it and know how to do
Really?
that.
It's
Yeah.
very, yeah, okay. Maybe it's because my dad showed me this basic
Mm.
stitching.
Yeah. Jay is
I
like,
don't know.
yeah.
Jay's very talented. So Jay also knows these things only for the purpose of it. He doesn't really care about the details. So this is the thing. Because my dad knew this, I knew how to do it. So, and I was just like, and this is the thing, what I love about being a child is that you don't really consider the consequences of things when you're very interested or like you're really have like a lot of adrenaline, is that I took apart all my, which my mom always like very funny says, you're very brave, you know that? Because I do these things, I take it apart. If it hadn't come out well, I would have been killed by my mother. But still, I'm like, I would just go ahead and do this without any remorse. Took apart my dress.
You're
'cause
like
I'm
you're like a prodigy equivalent to someone who disassembles machines and computers when they're very young. They're like, I just took this, I took the motherboard apart, I took this and that, and then I put them all
Oh,
over again.
gosh.
You're just like that equivalent to that.
Actually,
currently.
I think a lot of kids do this.
Yeah,
To
yeah.
be very honest,
I
like
don't
a
know
lot of kids.
how my childhood was spent. Like seriously,
What you've been
either
doing.
I'm dumb or yeah, the world is like too up there. Anyway,
So
yeah.
I took apart the dress, and I think I still remember this. Why is because I had to write down for my parents not to wake me up. I had to write down, listen, this is when I went to sleep. Please keep that in mind when you try to wake me up, because I'll sleep late. Because obviously they come to bed and they're like, why the hell are you still sleeping? So I started at 10 o'clock and I took this dress apart. That's my first time doing anything with regards to stitching. And I took the lining apart and everything apart and I made a bag out of it. I think I still have it. So, and I sat from 10 to 4. One sitting, finished the entire thing, seams and everything, fully functioning bag. It even had like one of those Velcro stoppers, so you can just stop it. And I wrote down, and I remember the time because I wrote down, I started this at 10 to 4, like 10 o'clock. I slept at 4. Please don't wake me up.
Okay.
I liked why I brought this entire thing up is that this is the only situation where I'd shown such dedication to sit in one place and do something. So I told you, because I was a lazy child, I sacrificed my sleep. I didn't even get up. I didn't feel hungry. I didn't feel anything. I was just sitting in one spot. And I had an experience. This would be common for a lot of people, for a lot of different. I'm a weird person. So I haven't really experienced this for a lot of things. I only experienced this for art.
Yeah, so that Zen flow like state.
Where I didn't feel like I was doing something. I was so focused.
And it felt effortless and it didn't require much cognitive like expenditure on your part.
Also, why I said this is because when you're at a dark time, you need something like this. So the bag in no way, the pattern in no way reflected my inner state. And I wasn't going through a dark time, but I could have. Because these are the kind of activities that I like to do in art where I'm going through a dark time where it's time consuming and I can focus on very small details. So you kind of get drowned into it and then all of that just becomes lighter. That's how it works for me.
All of that noise.
Yeah, all of it just becomes lighter. Yeah.
So that's okay. That's wonderful. That's your relationship with art.
That's my relationship with darkness. Now you gave me a very like essay-based question. I finished one part of it.
5 marks.
5 marks is done. So I don't know why I'm making so much like academic references.
A lot. I think it's like your last few months in college, and you're like, this is just your way of dealing with it.
I'm sad. I don't know whether to be like weirded out by the fact that I'm sad about it, but yeah. Okay, so because you totally didn't prepare me for this before, I have a lot of pieces of artwork here.
Yeah.
So yeah, second part of it was that you told me. So I will say this: dark parts of it, it does materialize in this way where I'm in a better place, and if music, because different types of art invoke emotion. I think good art invokes emotion. So
Yes.
sometimes I would say that I create good art only because if someone looks at it and they feel a certain way, I think I've succeeded. So, or they got them to think or whatever else. So I think good art invokes emotion. And music is definitely one of those things that for everybody, it does that. And I have had certain bad, like everybody does, certain bad experiences in my head. And I was sitting with one day with my friend, and she was also sketching. I was also sketching, but we put music out loud, and it was one of those songs that got you to think about dark things or like bad things. So
Which
certain
one?
songs trigger. This is weird if I say this. It's like blood in the water.
Oh, Blood in the Water. I think I've heard this.
You would have.
I think you've sent me this also.
I would have probably. And it's really, it has that beat where it's like you've gone through something disturbing, but you're kind of being very powerful and aggressive about it. That's the beat that I got. But yeah, Blood in the Water was playing, and it somehow reminded me of things that better forgotten. But it did get me in a mood to draw things. And then I literally did like, and even after the song was shut up, we were playing this on repeat. So we were really, both of us, it was working for the two of us. So we were just like, okay, cool. We're just going to keep it on repeat. We're not in a good place, but if we draw it and it's done with, it's done. And that's the wonderful thing is that once it was drawn and done with, I didn't harbor that emotion towards those incidences anymore.
Okay.
That was
Alright.
crazy to me because I've never done that before.
Mhm.
After I'd done that, like whatever bitterness, whatever sadness that led to me doing this, I just saw those incidents or experiences as just that
Right.
and nothing more.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I will show you.
Mhm. Sure. Yep.
So examples of each thing. So this was one. Oh gosh, is that clear?
It is. Yeah, it's anyway. I'm gonna like while editing, I'm just
Separately
gonna
put
put it
pictures.
like
All right,
So
that's better.
that's better still.
That's better. This is another one too.
Yeah, that was the one that required. I think you were playing this game where you were like, "What do you interpret from this?" And then you were kind of like
I was
checking
about to get to that.
how much I aligned.
I was
still
getting to
remember.
that.
It was a fun session. It was a fun session.
I did that
Yeah.
with literally anybody that I felt comfortable should show this to. What is up with me? I'm lisping everything. But anybody that I was like, and at this point, because it was out there, and the fact that it was I don't know how to say this indirect enough. I didn't mind showing this to people.
Okay.
Yeah, it was possible for me, but then it is so open to interpretation. I was like, it's cool. I can show this to people, no one's gonna understand. And I'm really happy about that. There's like certain privacy that I have with the fact that I'm so indirect with it. And it can be interpreted in a lot of ways. But this was an experiment that I did. So this, please, the psychology part of me interested me because I went up to people and I would show these sketches and I would ask them what they thought about it. And yeah, and a lot of people came up with a bunch of interesting things. And rather than whether it matches up with mine, I just like to see inside their psyche what images trigger what thoughts in them.
But is this something that's done as a part of counseling in general when you're like talking? Like, I know you haven't had any such experience as of now, like professional experience, but do you know of anything that happens in this
Yeah.
counseling world where they actually do this?
This
Hmm.
is there's like ink paintings. There's a specific word for it.
Mosaic?
No.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, but no. I'm so dismissive. No.
Right.
No, it isn't. It's just those. There's a specific word for it. It's lost on me now, but ink paintings that psychologists usually show and how those people interpret it would give you an insight into their psyche. The thing is, when you're directly asking questions, people can filter out what they're about to say.
Yeah.
But blind interpretations of it, they don't know you're asking with something in your mind. So they
Right.
kind of are like, oh yeah, this is what, there's a reason why their mind went in that direction. So which
So
is
that is
what I
interesting.
slyly tried to do
Right.
this
Yeah.
with quite a lot of people. And it's fun to
Mm.
see where people's head went.
So, did you notice any general pattern there with people, or everyone's way, or remarks or interpretation of the painting was like different or it's like completely unique?
I'll tell you, this was fun. So I'll tell you this. I like that this, I don't know if this is like praising myself, but the flower thing, right? The first one that I showed you, this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This, if you look at the specifics of it, it's just a very pretty flower getting pierced with a knife, a very
Mm-hmm.
jagged looking knife. There are petals falling off. That's literally it. But just only the idea of a flower, again, that's very broad. But for some reason, whenever I showed it to everybody, even though their definitions and interpretations were different, one thing that the first thing that comes out of their mouth is like innocence. And there's nothing like very directly, there's nothing in that picture that's directly pointing towards innocence.
Yeah, exactly. I remember my
But
interpretation of it.
yeah,
Yeah, my head just went completely somewhere else.
yeah. A lot of people said innocence.
Yeah.
And then and the funny thing is, they went from innocence to like, and then that's the thing, they went for somebody that I showed it to got reminded of their child, the teacher, and she was like, I got reminded of my daughter and how
Okay.
she's getting older
Mm-hmm.
and how she's not a kid anymore.
Oh, so the flower petals is like the one that bears
And
off.
I think the knife or something probably would have been died passing by or whatever. And I love that interpretation. And the fact that like she thought immediately of her daughter, when she saw innocence and
Yeah.
she related it to daughter, this is where her head went. She's like,
But
I
so-
can't bear to see that she's growing up so fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a specific pattern, but then unique experiences like drawing. So you see innocence, but then they draw from like their own experience, like your teacher did.
Yeah.
I think who you're referring to. I think I know who you're
You
referring.
do.
Yeah.
I mention her a lot. I'm very close to one of my teachers.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So no, that is interesting. And okay. Yeah. You
Yeah,
go
so
ahead.
that's the thing. Second part of the question, done. Third part, third part is that oh man, dark parts. What was the
brighter
third
parts,
part?
the brighter parts where you're like, oh, I
Brighter
have an
parts.
idea. I need to like put
Yeah.
this in. Like,
Yeah. So remember when I told you that I can't draw from the direct emotion that I'm getting when I'm going through bad things into art? I really
Yeah.
can't do that in
Mhm.
terms of negative emotions. The wonderful thing is I can do that for positive emotions.
okay.
Yeah. So for positive emotions, like there are elements that I did this. Okay. So I have a specific piece that came into my mind and I just kept my sketchbook randomly around because you asked me to, but but I do have a specific piece that came into my mind when I thought of happiness, because I didn't really anticipate this question. So this is a very childish painting, but I was filled with a lot of like childlike glee at the moment. And I had no specific image that was drawing me to that. I just simply was so like bubbly and happy, and I had that. And then this is directly, literally what I felt inside. So, gosh, this is bright.
Okay. So I see pink clouds
Mm.
and I see,
A very dancey moon.
yeah, a very dancey moon. Like I think you've tried to show, I don't know if you've tried to show the emotion, like the emotion of dancey and what is that?
Bubbly.
Bubbly through that thing that you have, like those
Yeah.
things that you put there. And then they're like stars. I don't know if I can see them correctly if they're stars, but then like there are some
They're
like
hanging
cascading
down like
stars.
fairy
Yeah,
lights. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was the state of
I
mind
was
here?
just plain happy.
Mhm.
I was just plain damn happy. I was so happy. There's no particular event that triggered it. I was
Mhm.
just super happy and clearly feeling childish, and I was just that's the thing. So I could do work then in this way, but clearly, like I feel like if somebody looks at it, they're like, "Wow, this artist was like really up there."
It is like bright colors and stuff, which is
It's
like
very
so not
like bright colors.
so
it's
not
not me.
you
It's not my
at
aesthetic
times.
usually. Yeah,
Exactly.
at times.
Yeah.
But
Look
Yeah.
at the muted colors. I just can't stop appreciating your background. I just feel like the entire theme is not like too bright or like it's. I don't know if I'm right here. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Is it like muted? It's a bit like toned
Yeah,
down for
yeah.
the
I
eyes.
don't particularly for so this we can talk about. This is interesting that you bring it up.
Hmm.
Is that I'm into interior designing for the design aspect of it,
The
but
design.
like yeah, but also because psychologically things like this affect me. And the reason why there's no bright colors in here is that I particularly wanted my room, like everybody wants that, but certain colors trigger me in different ways. And these colors, I had chosen the color palette and the entire design of the room to bring about. Like, I'm 21 years old, so I can't make it like a kid's bedroom to be like really comforting and warm. But I had to mold that adult aesthetic with. I have to make this like really nice looking and also really, really like someone's hugging you when you walk in.
Yes, you did mention that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think you succeeded in that. I don't think, I mean, I'm pretty sure that you succeeded in that, because the first thing when you showed me your room, I was like, the some for some reason it just feels so warm. And you're like, that was exactly what I was going for.
Exactly what I was going for.
So you were successful in that. And
Yeah.
to bring an idea into your head and to communicating to people, like this is I can only imagine how challenging it might
It's
be.
pain.
It is a pain.
A pain in the ass.
Yeah.
No, it's also why I want to specify on that is because if you tell a designer that you want a warm room, generically warm colors that are there, that's like they would go for like warm, earthy tones. If you're
Mm-hmm.
saying like a comfy tone, I don't find that comforting personally.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
personally, for me, lavender is very comforting, but it's a muted tone. It's generally a cold color, so it doesn't really go with the what I wanted. But for me, that depicts being warm.
Right. But
Yeah, and
and
I
the
merged that with a lot of other elements as well. So
yeah,
warm for
that is
me.
true. But as far as I can draw from one of our conversations, and I don't know if I have the liberty to say that online or like over
We'll
the
cut
podcast,
it off
but
accordingly if it's not.
but then I feel like there was this one time where you like the warm nature of your room is only also for one of your purposes, where you like whenever you have this influx of dark emotions or any of those heavy emotions, then this is one of your coping mechanisms where you immediately
Yep.
would like
Oh, you
sound
can say this, no problem. I'm very open about shit
yeah,
like this. Go
you know
ahead.
that, yeah, you know that a warm room is going to act as like a catalyst, to use your own word, in this regard, and this is going to like ease you. And I get, and I totally 100% agree that ambiences can play a big role
Yeah,
in determining your mood,
yeah.
and even like physiological state that you have. Because I remember there was this one time in a hotel I visited a room. It had no windows, no ventilation whatsoever, and I died, almost died, because it was so bad. But as soon as like there's an ambience change, for me personally, it just works. I don't know if it
Yeah.
works at all. I don't
Yeah,
know.
for
It's
certain
called
people, that's a sensitive thing. For me, it's a
exactly.
sensitive thing. For you, it's a sensitive thing. So that's why I pay special attention to
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah, and apparently it is also like a branch of science. I think psychophysics, where it deals with how light, sound, and all these things like really affect you. So I
Mhm.
get the ambience part, which can be can induce
Mm,
nausea in some people, and then some other
mm,
people, like when they move into a lighter space, they're like, wow, I feel like heaven. And your
mm.
room feels like something. I know it's nighttime, but during the day, I feel like I would
Oh
love
yeah.
to just be there forever. Like during a pandemic, it is the best house to get locked out in. And you'd be like, even if someone house arrests you, you'd be like, I don't mind. So,
Thank you so much. I didn't want to talk to people anyway. Thank you so
yeah,
much. Yeah, no, that's such a compliment because
yeah,
because
that
that's
definitely
exactly what I
is.
wanted. But yeah, I mean, I wanted my room to be that way, and mostly because I mean, maybe I can go into details if someone's interested in interior designing as to how I accomplished that personally, but subjectively, what I just did was what colors are comforting to me and how
Mm,
can I merge that with general ideas of warmth. Like
mhm.
I have warm yellow lights throughout, like spotlights because I'm narcissistic, but warm lights nonetheless. Really dark jewel tones. If I had dark tones, because if I had gone like it's white curtains and a very cold lavender tone, if I'd gone light completely, there would have been a certain unapproachable vibe to it. That's why I went for dark jewel tones. It's like a very warm green that's going on here. That's like specific details, but there are a lot of elements that had gone into it where these things, I remember all of these things. So a lot of people, I particularly get impacted by all of these things like colors, warmth, certain, and it changes. Like for somebody else, the meaning of a warm, welcoming bedroom might be something completely different, a completely different color palette, completely different elements. But I had to really sit with myself and be like, because my aesthetic generally is pretty dark, as you know. And I did for a while gravitate into darker designs in bedrooms. But then I was like, if I'm bedroom is supposed, or your room or your bedroom specifically is supposed to be a place where you come to be like really, it should really welcome you and it should accept you in all forms of yourself. It shouldn't just look pretty. So for me, at least, these kind of things impact me a lot. And I was like, okay, if I'm the happiest I can be, that's also, it should be, it'll be cool if I come into this room. But also if I'm like broken and really sad or whatever mood that's not pleasant, this room should really hide, make me feel a little bit better. And like I told you, I'm really particular about those little bits because I work a little bit for 10 different items, and that really pushes me towards um, making myself in a better place.
That's really interesting to draw from. Yeah, I have never really. Yeah, I don't know if people out there are who are into interior designing and all how they look as interior designing or designing of a room in general as something that could also be therapeutic or that could actually instigate a sort of like a psychophysiological response for them. Whenever they want to like sort of preserve themselves.
I think people do it on a very broad term.
Broad terms,
Yeah,
yes. I mean, yours is more like
very catered to me. I mean, also it makes, I was being anal about it because it's my place. I get like the designers have like multiple places to decorate, so it makes sense. But I did have this frustration where I would say certain things, but it did help in the sense that it made me take initiative.
Mhm.
Because I was like, okay, I want this, and I thought they would know. But since they hadn't done some of these things before, specifically this, like a little out there, like there are rooms that I've colored colors where they're like, really, this color? So, but I'm adventurous, like in that sense of the term. I was a little more brave, but I realized very quickly that if I'm not going to take initiative and find places where that provide me with products that I want or the looks that I want, or if I'm not very strict about what I want, because I know I have a final image that caters to something that's much prettier and like that none of these people are seeing. And it was such a trust exercise for myself because the entire time I should not freak out and be like, what if I'm messing this up? Because there was a part towards the end where, like before the end, when there was like part towards the end where some details were put in, so compliments were coming in a little bit. So my parents felt a little more at ease to let me boss around people because they're like, okay, she knows what she's doing. But before all of that came in, there were like a million doubts. They're like, are you sure? Because this isn't something that we've seen. Or so this isn't something that, not that I did crazy things, it's just they haven't thought about interior designing that much and I didn't want to get really boring things. But even small things like we have gray floors throughout the house. This is not a big deal. It's gray tiles. It's like the cement tile, which is like super trendy. But for my dad especially, I don't think he's still like kind of that used to it. They were like, are you sure this is what you want? I'm like, I'm dead sure. And that really, two things that happened through that is one, I decided to take initiative and be like, stick to it because I know where I'm going with this. And two, have faith in myself, which kind of aligns with the first point.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, okay, I mean, one last thing that I would like to touch on before sort of like heading towards the closing is this entire thing that we touched upon interior design, we touched upon art, and what I could make out is the vivid imagination as being one of the sources of it, right? As because you have a vivid imagination, you don't only touch upon the broad details like other people do, but you can actually get into the details of it, like this is what I want. And I guess the neuroticism comes from that, because if you can see something for the detail
Yeah.
that it has, you cannot accept anything,
You can't
subpar or
unsee it.
substandard. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, this is what I want. I can see another level, I can see it to another detail which you can't. And
Mhm.
obviously we can't blame people for this. It's just like
Of
the way
course, yeah.
our brains are wired, and they're
Yeah.
wired differently, and some people can see it, just like how it is with that thing, right, where you listen to a particular synesthesia, what is
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Some people have it to such a lucid amount, and some people
Yeah.
don't, to such a great degree.
Yeah.
So it's just like that. And one example that I like to give is like from that show, Anya Taylor-Joy's show, what is that, Queen's Gambit, where
Yeah.
she tells this guy like, hey, I
Can't
could
you see it?
can't you
Yeah.
see it? Exactly.
And he's like, sorry, I can't.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I can't. It's because different people are wired different way. But then I think most of the neurotics, like how, even about Apple, when I read Steve Jobs biography, this is what I found, because he can see to that level which people usually can't. So he's like, you gotta do this because I can see some wonderful things happening.
I think
Exactly.
the only reason that they couldn't necessarily see it all that well is because, like I told you, like if you're a designer and all of this, I think any person that does such work would be offended, because it's because they have multiple places, so they can't look at it in every like minute detail. But what I love about towards the end of it is that when I was saying specifically, especially the guy that did our furniture, we had our own carpenter, we had our own person that painted it because I needed specific colors for certain things. And certain metallic works that were there in our house too. I was very specific, and when there are people that are singularly working on that piece, they tend to take that detailed oriented remarks of mine like in a good way, because they're like, oh, she wants this exactly this way, and they actually prefer it because they're like, okay, cool, this is great, so I don't have to assume something or this is what you're meaning. I'm like, no, this is how it's going to look. I give like pictures and references, and I'm like, I will choose the color, and this is how I want the stroke to be, this is how I want the texture to be. I think when they're working on specific details, they also want the work, that specific detail about it, to be exactly the way that I intended. So it's easier to work with people like that. But maybe the reason why designers as a whole have a problem really catering to that is, one, I've understood here, I don't know if it's here, but yeah, designers aren't that involved in the process. It's more like, oh, we've seen similar vibes, so we're gonna go with that. So it's like an assumed
more
choice.
like a commercialized choice. Yeah,
it's a very assumed choice. So they're like, oh, with these kind of cold tones, you would want this, and I'm like, no, because my choices aren't that predictable. So I'm like, no, that's not gonna work. And yeah, my God, this entire interior designing thing is way too much, huh, Dati?
I know this yeah, I mean, it can be easier for people who have like a strong imagination, but then or maybe like, the will to execute, but I know for sure that I don't have. I am the least patient person, and
You can
I
listen
usually
to me ranting about it to you.
I can listen to people rant. I cannot give directions, in the sense that I know what I want, but then I'd rather just tell the other person that, hey, just do this and just leave me. I don't want to get involved in the process anymore.
Please leave me alone. I can't
I'll
do
give
this
you
anymore.
this thing. This is what I want, but I don't
Mhm.
want to be involved with the process like every bit of the way, which is
I think
something
that's
that,
also another thing. I understood your
yeah,
aesthetic and your taste.
yeah.
I'll do
and
it for you when the
it-
time comes. I'll do it for
it's
you.
better. I want good things. I like beautiful things, right? I have an
Lot of work.
appreciation for good, but then I don't want to get involved. So which is why I need someone that I can trust, really, who can get this done, because I don't have that neuroticism. I have that element in the way that I want that to be done, but I cannot be involved with the other person being like 100% of the way, being like, you just do this, just leave me, I will focus on other work that I have. You get this done. Meanwhile, and if it is good enough, you're going to be like heavily compensated, but if it is not,
Thank
then
you.
yeah.
Oh no. If not is not an option, please.
I mean, if for you, I'm just talking about you. I mean,
Yeah, if you're going to
talking
another
in general.
designer, I will tell you if not is very much an option.
Exactly.
But then I'm right here in front of you and you chose somebody
Yeah.
else. So I doubt your choices more than anything.
Exactly. So quite a vivid discussion. Quite a
Oh
vivid
my
discussion.
God.
Like we started from stress and how to ways to deal with it. Then we came to art, then interior design, and so many things that we would have covered up and here and there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, my co-founder, my ghost host, ghost host.
Coast.
I think it's like 10:55 p.m. in the evening. So like,
Oh yeah.
brain
Oh,
is
gosh.
brain is like shutting down.
Oh no. Finish it up quickly. I can't. I
Yeah.
can't.
No,
I can't.
anyway, ghost host. It was really fun to have you here, and I cannot wait for this talk to go up. Definitely,
Oh
although
my gosh.
yeah, by
It's
this
gonna
time,
take a
like,
while.
yeah, it's gonna take. It's gonna take with the editing and stuff, because
Guys,
so many
also
problems.
once this goes up, I kind of need to give a warning towards the end. Bad warning because it's towards the end. But I'm so sorry for the number of edits. The power kept going,
Yeah,
coming on and in,
it's
in and
it's
off.
because of the part. Yeah,
It's because I'm a ghost host. My power also is acting that way.
exactly. The
But
ghosting
yeah,
capabilities.
hosting
of the
capabilities. Also, we haven't spoken in a while, so it also were like the conversation went like so much. There's
Yeah,
a lot of fluff to cut through because we can't put the entire thing. I don't think so. There's going to
right.
be quite a lot of there's most definitely a lot of intense editing, and I'm so sorry if you have problems with that. But yeah.
Right. So I guess yes, this is where we're gonna close.
Mhm.
And adios, amigo.
Bye bye.